guys, in today's video we're going to be checking out the Mattel Justice League action. This is the cool, this is the collective, this is Mr. Freeze. Before we do anything else, let's figure out how tall Mr. Freeze is. And he's about the same as all the other Justice League action figures, just close to being about 5 inches in height. He's a little bit shorter than 5 inches tall. In fact, to show you how he stacks up to other Justice League action figures, here he is next to Firestorm. Here he is next to Flash, a lot of red-colored characters. And we'll throw in a little bit of different coloring there. There he is with Green Arrow. If I can actually get Green Arrow to stand. He's a little backpack heavy. Actually, you know what? We'll take the backpack off. We don't. He's just standing, guys. We don't need him battle ready. And there are the figures, how they all stack up to one another. I guess Mr. Freeze is a little bit taller, but that's only really because of his helmet. If not for that, he would be about the same height as all the other figures. He gets himself a bunch of different accessories, which are a little strange. Just a little strange. First things first, not so strange does Mr. Freeze come included with an ice sword. A really nice translucent blue plastic sword, which, as you can see, there is a hole in the handle, or just right above the handle area. We'll get into that in a second. But not a bad looking sword. I really do like that. I love how it looks like a big shard of ice. You can go ahead and put that into his hand, as it should, you would imagine it should be able to fit into his hand. Although, you do have to kind of have it closer to the bottom of the hilt. Any bit further up, it becomes a little broader. It's a little harder for him to actually hold it. So he does have that. Then to get into the more stranger ends, the stranger department, he comes with these. Which I suppose you could pretend, as I did at the beginning of this review, that these are like freeze blasting gauntlets. You can fit it on his hand. You have to take the little plug there and actually fit it around his fists for him to properly hold them. You can't simply just clamp it over top of his arm, because there's just not enough skin in the game. There's just not enough keeping it on his forearm. So you have to attach it on the undersides like that. Now, if you look at the packaging, I'm going to bring in the packaging here for a second. If you look at the packaging, it shows that the sword can attach to the interior of the gauntlet. Okay, let's run with that. Let's run with that. So we're going to go ahead and take the gauntlets off. We'll just put Mr. Freeze here for a second down. And we'll grab the sword. So going back to that little hole, the hole actually does fit itself. If you put it the right way. There we go. It will actually fit inside the little gauntlet, which makes it look as if it's an ice sword. Sounds pretty cool, doesn't it? No pun intended. You would then think that the other end would be able to attach, oh, I don't know, like that, and you would have a fully enclosed gauntlet. Or one better, you probably would think to yourself, there's a lot of thinking happening here. There's an open hole here. I could probably fit it through his arm and attach it like so. This all sounds good on paper. Let me just show you the problem with that, though. I'm going to take this off. I just want to show you, they're mirror copies to one another. I don't know if that's supposed to be the case, or if this just happened to be a mispack where I got two of the exact same. But they don't attach to one another. This should almost be down here as well, so that the pegs would attach or slot themselves in to the other end. They line themselves up, and there's nothing to connect the two together. It's not simply a case where I just have to off-align it. They just don't attach to one another. Nor does this section here attach to this. There's nothing connecting the two pieces together. So while you can put it into the sword, like so, there's really nothing you can do to get him to properly hold it. He kind of let me just show you what ends up happening. He kind of awkwardly holds it, but he only holds it by the handle of the actual sword. It seems as if they knew what they were supposed to do. Like they could have done something like that. But I don't know what's happened here, because you can't attach the two pieces together. The other thought I was thinking, okay, well, he's got these little handles. Maybe he can hold it like a gun. Well, that doesn't quite work either, because the handles are too small, or the grip of his hands are too big. So that doesn't work either. There's a lot of doesn't work happening here when it comes to Mr. Freeze. It's a good idea, but it seems as if it's supposed to have done something different, and Mattel just didn't follow through making it right. Or they just didn't think this far ahead. And I think to myself, really? This seems like a no-brainer to me, and yet, for some reason, you can't do that. The other thing with the gauntlets is there's really no other place that you can put it on Mr. Freeze. Normally, they're the connector point that would hold the weapon into the Justice League action figure would also be the same peg that you could attach it to the back. But the peg doesn't stick far enough out that you can't really attach it to his back. Again, if they had made the peg just a little bit longer, just a sliver longer, you could have been able to attach it to his back, and you would have made it look as if he had a backpack, which for Mr. Freeze would make sense. And ultimately, they just didn't do that. We'll put those to the side. I mean, it's not a total loss, because if you have any of the other Justice League action figures, you can make use of their accessories. And for example, we can take, I think this was Firestorms, you can put that on the back of Mr. Freeze, which would be slightly redundant. It doesn't, somewhat even ironic than putting a fiery attachment on the back of a cool villain like Mr. Freeze. But just to show you that you can make use of the other Justice League action weapons. So that can also fit into his hand. You can also put it this way into his hand, like so. You can also take Green Arrow's backpack or his quiver, and you can give Mr. Freeze, put it the right way, there we go, you can give him the helicopter. So that's pretty cool. Again, I said cool. So we'll move all that stuff out of the way. Of course, the one other thing he comes included with is the dome for his helmet, which at the beginning, and you get this guy out of packaging, the dome is removed. So why don't we start there? I've always really liked blue Mr. Freeze, a blue costumed Mr. Freeze, and this one here is no exception. I do think it turned out very nice. Love the dark shades of the blue mixed with the lighter, almost metallic blues. I'm not really sure what's happening in the leg area. You've got that marbling, and I don't think is intentional. I think rather it's just the way that the plastic was mixed, that you get this weird looking marbling effect that's been done to the lower legs. It doesn't seem to happen as much anywhere else. Here in the arms, it's to some extent, but not to the full extent of what we're getting here in the legs. As for his face, it's very Mr. Freeze. It seems as if he's got eyelashes. I don't recall him having eyelashes, but he does seem to have eyelashes. Love the very bright red goggles, which complement nicely the red on the interior, the red center medallion or center control light, I suppose, of his suit here. He's very clunky, but he's not overly bulky. In fact, actually, much like other Justice League action figures, he comes across a little on the stocky side, very short on proportions. His head almost reads a little bit bigger than what it should, but overall not a bad looking figure. I do really like it quite a bit. The helmet, by the way, only goes one way, so as soon as you start putting it down, yeah, that doesn't make sense. We'll have to spin it around, plank it into place, and it just connects via the two peg slots on either side there. Articulation on Mr. Freeze. His head rotates, but very, very little. That's about all you're really going to get from it. So if you are wanting to display him, displaying with the helmet, it's not as if you're missing out on any sort of posability on this guy. Then you get your typical articulation for Justice League action figure. Arms hinge out, rotate them all the way around. He's got the bend in the elbow, which also rotates the forearm. He has no hand articulation. He has waist articulation. Legs split out, forward and back, bend at the knee, and you can also rotate the lower boot. Just in case also, and I mentioned this in other Justice League action figure reviews, he has peg holes, for that matter, on the undersides of his feet. They are extremely small pegs, and they have yet, or I have yet, to find a peg stand that accommodates the pegs this small. I've even tried like the Funko vinyl stands, which were very small, clear stands, and unfortunately they just don't fit that. So again, I don't know why they would put peg holes on the undersides of his feet when really they don't come with stands, nor do they really have suitable peg holes to fit any stands you may have in your collection. Nonetheless, they put the pegs on the undersides of his feet. A rather useless, if you ask me, useless inclusion for a figure, because really the figure stands, in this case for Mr. Freeze, perfectly fine. The chilling Mr. Freeze is a nice looking figure, and it's also nice that we're getting a little bit more in the way of villains when it comes to Justice League action. It's nice to get Supermans and nice to get Batmans, but once in a while you gotta fill up the ranks with some villains. It's nice to see that Mr. Freeze is making those ranks. The figure as a whole looks good. It has the same sort of proportions one would expect with the Justice League action figures, and I love the accessories that he comes included with, except for the gauntlets. I just don't understand why the gauntlets were made the way that they were, because really everything, looking at it, any normal person with some common sense could look at that and think to themselves, first and foremost, well, those two gauntlets should come together. Well, they don't. And they seem like they should have. So I don't even know why Mattel opted to give the pegs the way that they were when you really can't connect the two together. Or unless I was just lucky enough that I got a Mr. Freeze that has two of this same gauntlet halves, which normal Mr. Freezes in retail releases should have ones that connect together. I guess I'm just lucky that way. If you had managed to pick up this figure along the way, let me know in the comments section down below if the halves of the gauntlets should come together. Maybe I just lucked out and didn't so much luck out and got myself a Mr. Freeze that just so happened to be packaged with two of the same half. Sigh. Still a nice looking figure. I hope that Justice League Action gives us some more villains, because as much as I love the heroes, I'm more of a sucker, I think, when it comes to the villains. And today we were having a look at the Mattel Justice League Action. This was a very cool Mr. Freeze. No more puns for the rest of this video. Well, the video is almost done, so it's very easy to make that promise. If you guys haven't had a chance to hit that little subscribe button down below, make sure you do so. Many more videos will be coming your way. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.